Okay, guys. So we're jumping in here after World War I is already over. The United States is sort of, going through the Great Depression, and we're taking over a look over in Europe and see what's going on with Germany. As we obviously know, World War II is going to break out in about, let's see, roughly 8 to 10 years from this point. But let's just take a look and see what's going on. So Europe, all of Europe, was in bad shape after World War One. Even the countries that won. They say in war there's no real victor, but in this case, so much damage on each side that probably was true. So we're focusing more on Germany though, because obviously that's the country that's going to lead us to World War II. Excuse me. So one of the thing important economic situation to realize is that inflation was skyrocketing. And when we mean skyrocketing, we mean the price of bread would go up, as an example, by 50% a day, and sometimes, by the end of the month, what you could have afforded, let's say for 5 marks, was now, close to 500 marks. So it was really, really bad situation with inflation. One of the problems for the German economy is that they were burdened by debt. Remember the reparations that they had to pay, and that, of course, was money that they could not use for them to rebuild their own countries. And in addition, there are other countries, and they were struggling because they were recovering from a wartime economy. And a wartime economy is when you have all your factories and people geared up to make war-related materials. And of course, having to transition back to a peacetime economy and retrofit the factories and have your production reflect peacetime desires and needs. Now, one of the things, the United States was in fairly good shape, having only been in the war for barely about a year and a half or so, economically, before the Great Depression, which we can say started, let's just say roughly, 1929 or so. But before the Great Depression, many European countries owed money to the United States because they were borrowing, and the United States for a long time wasn't at war. And so they were in a position to loan money during World War One. Now, some Europeans were saying, look, this is so much debt. We have to rebuild from the war. Please just forgive us all the debt. But the United States was not about to do that. But things really, really were bad. Risk of famine was widespread in Europe, mainly in Germany. It was very, very difficult to find adequate food. Water supplies and systems were in need of repair. Medicine was not widely available. And remember, this is still before penicillin. So, not that they had the greatest medicine in the first place, but what they did have was not available in mass quantities. And even people lacked adequate housing as much of the landscape had been destroyed. So these are certainly not good situations for anyone. Well, as German reparations, which eventually were determined to about 33 billion, um, they were unable to pay that. Now, you mentioned inflation was rampant. It was so bad, as you can see here, people were using German money as wallpaper. In this case right here, German money is just being swept down the drain because it's literally not even worth the paper it is printed on. Now, this obviously leads to economic uncertainty. Now, the United States says, okay, we have to do something. The U.S. feared that a dictatorship could arise in Germany due to the terrible economic situation. And that obviously will prove to be prophetic because that's exactly what did happen. And so, again, before the Great Depression, U.S. bankers agreed to lend Germany more money before the Great Depression. And then we came up with a Dawes plan. This is not the Dawes plan that talked about dividing up Indian reservations or anything like that. This is a different Dawes plan. And the idea was, hey, let's reduce Germany's annual payments, give them a little more cash flow. Let's give them more time to make all the reparations. Let's give them some more loans. And hopefully this will at least maintain peace. And again, our biggest fear was let's try to prevent that from happening. And what this did, it created a triangular relationship of payments. And here we see we have U.S. investment and loans going to Germany. Germany pays reparations to the Allies. Remember, they owed that 33 billion. And then Allies use some of that money to pay back the loans to the United States. So in a sense, you could say that the United States is paying itself but the other thing that happens is that this does, at least temporarily, prevent the rise of dictators, as we will see, and it tends to be the whole situation for every society, is that when economic situations are okay, then you don't really usually have that much a need for revolution or desire to change government. But when economic situations are dire and desperate, that's when people start to demand change. And so it looked as though, at least temporarily, peace was going to be the word of the day in Europe. However, we know that this stability, unfortunately, was short-lived. The USA was able to support Germany with loans as long as the U.S. economy was strong. And I think we all know that since we just got done doing the Great Depression and New Deal, we know that it was not the case. And as the U.S. economy began to falter after the Great Depression, or as the Great Depression loomed, this entire system was now in danger because it all depended on the U.S. economy being strong. And as the economic situation worsened, the USA and other countries began to pass tariffs in hopes it would stabilize their economy. And one of the biggest, most notable, was the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act. Now, we know for a fact that in general, increasing tariffs hurt trade. There are some exceptions. Now, while the United States felt that it had to increase the tariffs it was charging, it actually served to worsen the Great Depression. And we know the Hawley-Smoot tariff, the idea was to buy American. If we institute the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, it will make foreign goods more expensive, and it'll make U.S. goods more affordable. And so the idea was, let's encourage people to buy American. But the result, and you would think we would learn, but apparently we still haven't learned, global trade was reduced because of the lack of free trade. And that supposedly we really ought to learn that lesson as a society. All right, thank you so much.